Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Dog Whisperer podcast. So, I bragged about a couple episodes ago about how I had my first Republican on my podcast. His name is Phil Heimlich. He was running for Congress in Ohio's, I believe it's the second congressional district. And actually, he was related to the guy who invented the Heimlich maneuver. He was the son of him. And now I have another Republican who's running here in New Jersey for a county position. And your name?
I'm Johnathan Duff. Thanks so much for having me.
Johnathan, thank you so much for being on here. Now, you are from Burlington County, New Jersey, correct?
That's right. I grew up in Medford Lakes. I went to high school at Lenape High School. I went to California for college, came back. I'm out of Southampton Township now.
Southampton, right?
Southampton, yeah, that's right.
And so, for those of my listeners or anyone who's viewing this on YouTube who might not be too familiar with New Jersey, you and I are both Jersey boys. I assume you're born in Jersey, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. Where'd you go to college in California, by the way?
Dominican University,
Oh, where's that? I've never heard of it.
Northern Bay, north of Marin.
Okay, okay, yeah. So the Bay Area.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
exactly.
Well, so for those of my listeners who are not familiar with New Jersey, tell me a little bit about Burlington County, where you were running to be a commissioner.
Yeah, Burlington County is a beautiful, diverse area. We've got, Pinelands, encompass maybe about 30% of our land area in the eastern half. Then we've got rich farm towns in Rancocas Valley. We've got really beautiful suburbs in what we call the M group. And we've got really great river towns, working class areas, large city centers. So this is a very diverse area, not just ethnically, but also socioeconomically. I'm really looking forward to if I get elected representing all of it.
Well, I've said this before, and I was saying it to someone else, but Burlington County, and this is not as an insult, I mean it as a compliment. It reminds me kind of like Springfield in the show The Simpsons. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got a lot of diversity, a little bit of everything. You've got immigrants who own their own businesses. You've got people
Yes.
who are blue collar. You've got a lot of racial diversity, religious diversity. It's a little bit of everything, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's actually my favorite thing about Burlington County is that we represent all walks of life here. But what I found in this campaign and throughout my life living here is that people are unified in the human condition, regardless of the circumstances of their upbringing or their walk of life, right? What a mother in a large city center like Willingboro wants for her children is the same thing that a mother in Medford or Bass River or New Hanover wants for her children, right? Safe communities, good schools, the opportunity to afford a home when they grow up. And that's why I'm running, because I want to represent all of those people.
Well, it's very admirable. And how old are you?
23 years old.
So you're I'm trying to think. You may be the first guest I've had on this podcast who is younger than me. I'm 20.
Really?
I'm 27.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
yeah. So I'm trying to think, and I can't take too long to think because we have a podcast to do. But I will get back to you on that one, Jonathan. Uh,
Sure. Yeah.
so Burlington County, for those of my listeners who don't know, is South Jersey, and it's really most of it is suburban or suburbs of Philadelphia. Of course, there's a lot of rural areas, but you're really in the Philadelphia metro area.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, it is along the Delaware, the western border. So you have
Mhm.
places like Delran, Willingboro, Delanco, Riverside, Florence that are along that area. And then you go all the way further inland, we have a border with the Atlantic Ocean as well.
That's true. Bass River, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
believe we're one of the largest counties by land area in the
yeah, I
state.
think you're only
The
rivaled
owners.
by ocean. It's pretty close. And this is literally one of those few counties in the state of New Jersey where both the Turnpike and the Parkway go through your county.
Yes, yes, which is awful for commuting, but I mean it's good and it's bad for commuting. A lot
Yeah.
of lot of traffic.
That is very true. Very true. Absolutely. And I've been all over Burlington County. I've never lived in Burlington County. I've actually lived in Gloucester County and so I've lived in a couple counties in New Jersey, but Burlington is definitely in a league of its own. And I think it's great that you're running for commissioner. Tell my listeners, whether they're from New Jersey or from California where you went to college, what does a county commissioner do in our great states?
Yeah, so in New Jersey, we have something called home rule, which means that much of the services that you think about, like roads and direct services, police, education, are handled through the municipal level. County commissioners play the part of overseeing a lot of those services to ensure that quality is upheld. We make contracts with municipalities. There are a lot of boards that oversee things like the Pineland services, education, transportation, public works, health and safety. So there is, I think an outsized role for county commissioners, the board in New Jersey, but we are limited in direct authority.
How many commissioners are there in Burlington County?
There are five, and they are all currently Democrats.
Interesting. So you're hoping to break a blue wall as a Republican, and how many are up for election this year? I mean, how many commissioner spots will be on our ballot?
So there are two seats. I do have a running mate. His name is Nick Paulson. He's a township committeeman from New Hanover. I am really excited to be running with him. And then I'm facing two Democrats, one who is a fresh face, Tyler Burrell, and one who is the incumbent director, Felicia Hobson.
Well, Burlington County is a very, I would say, it's pretty blue right now. I mean, it has gone for Republicans in the past, but the last Republican to win the presidency in Burlington County was H.W. Bush. And
Yes.
Burlington County for a long time was one of those counties that voted for Democrats on the federal level, for Senate, a lot of times for governor, but Republican on the local level. And as you stated, the commissioners all Democrats. So why do you think Burlington has been trending blue recently?
I would say that we have a large suburban, base that makes up the majority of the county's population. But I think that one of the key things is, and this is hard for me to say, as a Republican, but I feel as though your average Republican has been run here year after year, and they have tried 7 years in a row, and they have lost 7 years in a row. And the reason for that is when you think about a generic Republican, they're often, asking the question of how can we make government smaller? How can we cut taxes for big businesses? How can we deregulate existing industries? That's not where I come from. I take a different view. I think that government should be a vehicle to fundamentally improve people's lives. And when we have things like rising crime, 116% increase in drug overdose deaths, 47% increase in youth suicide, 17% of people 18 to 20 are neither employed nor in college. We've got, overdevelopment, haphazard. The county level planning board, which the county commissioners oversee, has failed. BCIT, our VOTEC, and our adult trade schools, which again, the county commissioners oversee, is horribly mismanaged and underfunded. I say, look, we've got these serious issues. I think government should be used as a vehicle to fundamentally improve people's lives, not necessarily, I don't think that smaller government is an end in itself.
Well, my philosophy is have smaller government where it makes sense and sustain the size of government wherever it makes sense. Because I feel like what both parties often do, and in your case, the Republican Party, is they want to figure out how can we get to this destination without thinking about whether this is the most pragmatic way of doing things or whether this will benefit everyone. It seems like a lot of people in politics across the spectrum try to fit themselves to match an ideology rather than uh, uh, figuring out their ideology based on what they see as being reality.
Right.
It's not a good state that we're in right now.
Oh, for sure. Political polarization is so extreme, but you've got, the three-legged stool of what was once the Republican Party is sort of falling apart. And I think one of the beautiful things about that is that we can remake the image of what the Republican Party is and stands for. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm getting involved, because I think that we need a new vision to take it in a different direction, to involve ourselves in the affairs of people's lives and how to improve them, and not, this old-fashioned, worldview where we need to take a back seat and, allow corporations to essentially run the economy and have their way with working people.
Did you ever see the show Family Ties?
I did not. I've never seen it, no.
Okay, well, I know a little bit about it. It was from the 80s with Michael J. Fox, but you know, I think a lot of people, when they hear Republican, they think corporate America, they
Yeah,
think smaller government, they think waspy country club type people. And
right.
what you're saying is actually, I mean, I'm not saying that you're a Democrat. I don't think you are, but it sounds like some of what a lot of what my Democratic friends say. And I'm a Democrat, and I've been accused of being a Republican. Do Republicans ever accuse you of being Democratic?
I would say, sometimes you get that, but look, I think that one of my greatest political influences was Teddy Roosevelt, and another one is Huey Long. Those are two people who defied the left-right paradigm. They defied definition, and their main focus was a philosophy and policy that sought to, put the people's interest first. And, if that's how, some people I think take a more narrow worldview as to
Right.
how we should approach policy and what ideas are important to mix in. I don't really see it that way. And if that's how people want to see me, then that's how people want to see me. I do have some conservative viewpoints, but you know, some people are, just all about the partisan rancor, and that's not me.
Of course. What did you major in at Dominican?
Applied computer science.
Okay, because I'm a political science major, and people really don't know what liberalism and conservatism means. Conservatism has lost its meaning. Liberalism has lost its meaning. When a
Right.
lot of people hear conservatism, they think of former President Trump, and I say, aside from the fact that I don't believe he has any sincere political beliefs, he's completely transactional, that's not what conservatism has traditionally been about. What we're seeing on the left with with a lot of people voting against condemning Iran is not liberalism. Condemning Israel, the most progressive, not politically speaking, but lifestyle-wise, the most progressive and liberal country in the Middle East, is not liberalism. So I feel like that both of these labels, it's fine to put yourself into one of them, but the people who are screaming the loudest that they're a proud conservative or a proud liberal or a proud progressive are usually the least progressive or the least conservative.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, this is something where I think that our politics in general is starting to realign itself, right? The priorities of what was once liberalism and what was once conservatism are in some sense, falling to the back, the back end of what people are thinking about, right? I think people care about taxes, but I don't think that taxes are, again, an end in themselves. I think people are more concerned about what kind of country are my kids going to grow up in? How is my kid ever going to afford a house? Hey, these drugs are running rampant in the streets. What's going on? What is the state going to do for me? And I think that the answer needs to be government is going to improve people's lives. And I think that we're starting to see a realignment around a new paradigm of rather, I think that the divide used to be economics. I think the new divide is going to be culture war issues in the mainstream.
What are your thoughts on the culture war stuff?
This
That's
is
not
a
my
really
main
difficult
concern. I
one.
want to know what you thought.
Yeah, it's not my main concern either. This is something where county commissioners have very little authority over things like education policy. Very little authority, abortion is settled law in the state. And my personal beliefs in terms of how I look at myself and what kind of life I want to lead are never going to impart how I conduct policy, how I represent the people of my county or, however, of Burlington County. That's never going to be something that I inject into public policy. So I
So
guess I'm more of a libertarian socially.
So you told me a little bit about what your how you differ from Republicans uh, currently. I want to know Burlington. Keep in mind that the county you're running is a pretty Democratic county. What are your biggest problems with the Democratic Party right now?
Yeah, so I think that the Democratic Party has become a machine in this state. I think that they, have power for its own sake in this county. Tyler Burrell, who was running, for the open seat for county commissioner, has been in Delran Township government for 8 years. And the best you can say when you go to his record is that he modernized the township website and created a Facebook page. We have a congressman, somebody seeking congressional seat, Herb Conway, who has a $112,000 job part time in the Burlington County Health Department while also being a state lawmaker, meaning that this person is double dipping into our state tax dollars. And Felicia Hobson, as director, I sat across from her at a town hall debate on Tuesday, and she looked me in the eye and looked people in Southampton in the eye and said that the county commissioner board has nothing to do with crime, that we do not affect crime in any way. We have a sheriff's department, we have a correctional office, and there are many ways in which we can affect crime through tackling early literacy, through tackling poverty. I think that the Democratic machine in New Jersey has a stale idea of how public policy can improve people's lives. I think we need to be innovative, and I think we need to think bigger.
Well, you bring up a lot of interesting points because, you were on, for those of you who don't know, I have a show on WRSU Records Radio with Aiden DeMarcy. You should check it out. It's called The Scarlet State. And you were on that show Monday morning. It's now at 8:30 in the morning rather than 11. But you have said that in a lot of areas of Burlington County, crime is going up.
Right.
What and this is not just Burlington County. We see this in places like New York City, Philadelphia, where we have terrible bail reform enacted by Andrew Cuomo, Bill de Blasio, Kathy Hochul. Democrats in these areas are very indifferent, if not sympathetic, to criminals. And we also have progressive DAs like Larry Krasner who are undercharging, who has stated previously that he doesn't want to really prosecute illegal gun possession charges because he feels like it is going to negatively put away, or not negatively, but it's going to negatively impact a lot of African Americans. And this is insanity. Like, I mean, if we're the law is not really supposed to be selective. What's going on in Burlington County? Why is crime going up?
Yeah, so I think that there is something, income inequality is at an all-time high. I think there's something to be said about the fact that the economy and poverty do play a role to some degree in crime rates. So when income inequality goes up, when employment goes down, antisocial behavior rises, and then crime rises as a result. So I think that that is some of the consequence of skyrocketing income inequality over the past 7 years. And one of the things that I want to do, yes, we need to be ensuring that the law is enforced, do the crime, do the time. I fully believe in that. However, I also take the view that we should be getting to the root of why crime is taking place and put policy measures in place that are going to prevent and rehabilitate people. One of the things is that if a child does not learn to read by the age of 5, their chances of economic success in adulthood are drastically diminished and their chances of incarceration are drastically increased. So we need to make sure that every child has the tools with which to learn to read and has access to a decent early education. At the same time, people who are coming out of prison, it's very hard to get a job with a criminal record, and that can pull you into a life of crime. I think that first time offenders need to be, put up with a job. There's a lot of individually owned businesses willing to hire criminals, people with a criminal record. And I think that having a database and having some sort of, networking system that would connect those people to those opportunities, studies have shown that that can reduce recidivism by up to 75%
Where were the
after
studies?
first time
Where
offense.
do they do those studies? I'm very curious. This is the first time hearing about it.
Now, this is something where I don't remember where I read it.
Okay.
So I have to admit, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but in theory, it would reduce recidivism. And that would
Well,
be a matter of personal responsibility at that.
of course, absolutely, because people have to take the opportunities. My philosophy is government has to help people to help themselves. And
Yes.
and I do think that reentry services are vitally important. I think that there are some people, unfortunately, who are beyond rehabilitation. I do believe that there are some people who are just evil and can't be rehabilitated, but we don't take a chance on a lot of people, unfortunately. Um,
Yes.
so it's one thing to have a database for who is a criminal and who isn't. I believe businesses have the right to know, but there needs to be more uh, prison needs to be punitive and rehabilitative at the same time.
Oh, I think you might have misunderstood a little bit what I was getting at. I wasn't
No,
saying
I
have a
know,
database
I know,
of
I know.
criminals.
Databases to connect prisoners with jobs.
Business is willing to
Yeah,
hire them.
because there
Exactly.
are some people who say that like that block the box basically or ban the box, like that businesses should not have the right to ask whether someone has been convicted of a crime or to look it up. And I disagree with them on that, but I agree with you
I
about
disagree.
I agree with you about these databases hooking prisoners up with job opportunities. And I wanted to ask, what do you think of universal pre-K? Because a lot of people, especially the Democratic Socialists, are always talking about free college. I think free pre-K is more important because it goes back to what you were saying about reading. When you go to preschool, you're more likely to hear, I think, a million more words, less likely to go to jail or less likely to drop out of high school. What do you think of that idea?
So, I have looked into this on a legal and policy level. County commissioners do not have the authority to establish universal preschool. I'm all in favor of it. This
Hmm.
is something where, public education is already recognized as a right, kindergarten through 12th grade. Preschool is so fundamentally important. I went to a private preschool called a Montessori school. It was a different alternative private form of early education, but I credit that system with the foundations of the way I look at the world and, I think a facility for language that is really strong. Not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm a product of success as a result of that early education. And so I think that every child should have the right to a decent early education. Literacy rates, there is no reason in this country why literacy rates should not be at 100% in every area. But as far as what we can do, I've looked into the idea of a universal preschool voucher system. What that would do is it would put money directly into the hands of parents with a child that is between 3 and 4, preschool age, and it would allow them to, essentially what we would be doing is we would be cost sharing private preschool with people whose kids, and I think you may know, public preschool is done on a lottery system in New Jersey. So those parents who don't make the lottery system, what we would have is a system in place to ensure that their child can still be financially enabled to go to a different preschool.
Right. So there could be public and private options for preschool.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense, definitely. Um, I wanted to ask a
That's
little.
the expanse of what we can do in county government. Sorry, continue.
Oh, no, not at all. It's very important stuff. So Aiden has spoken about this on the Record show. What are your thoughts on S2? I realize that it's legislative and you're a commissioner, but like I've heard that a lot of schools in Burlington County have been negatively impacted. What is there anything that the commissioners in Burlington County can do about this issue, which, from what I understand, has drastically reduced funding for a lot of these schools in your county?
I think what our county commissioners could be doing, but are not, is using the power of their office to advocate for their own constituents. Andrea Katz, who is one of our state assemblywomen, voted in favor of S2. I think it's an absolute disgrace that she did, because what it did was Lenape Regional High School District lost $4.7 million in 1 year. That's going to cut things like, they're talking about getting rid of a school. They're talking about after school programs being completely cut. They're talking about after school busing being completely cut. These are things that are going to hamper the quality of education across my legislative district in a major way. And while the county commissioners do not have any authority over how districts are impacted by state funding, what our county commissioners could be doing is standing up, going to the press or going to the governor's office and advocating for their own constituents. They are not wielding the power of their office or the stature of their office in any way. And that's where I think people, when you have one party rule machine, Democrats get too comfortable. They get, sort of fat and happy, and they sit on their butt and they don't do anything for their own constituents. And I'm sick and tired of it. And that's why I'm running.
When was that S2 vote? I don't remember.
It was at the start of this year, I think. I'm actually not certain on when it was voted on, but it was one of her first votes.
Okay, this is the first time hearing about that because I thought it was previously, before that.
Yeah, yeah. No, she did vote in favor of it. This is going to be implemented for the upcoming school year, and the consequences of it are going to be astronomical. LRHSD is losing $5 million. I think Aiden's district, Evesham, is losing $600,000, I think. Millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars being cut in pretty much every single school district across Burlington County.
And Evesham is obviously the largest town in Burlington County, so I would assume more stu. Is that the largest school district where Evesham, or is it a shared service thing? I think it's
It's certainly one of our larger school districts in
right.
the 8th legislative district, though I
Right.
can't tell you comparative to places like Willingboro and LD7.
Right. And Willingboro obviously is the most democratic town. It's very African American. I think it was the
Yeah.
only town that voted against Governor Christie two times. Burlington County, the last time it voted for Republican for governor was Chris Christie, and Willingboro, I believe, was the only town that voted against his reelection. How would you connect with those voters in Willingboro as a Republican?
Sure. I think that Republicans have a really tough time in areas that are majority Black, not because we couldn't connect, but because we don't go out and speak to them. And more importantly, we don't listen to their concerns, right? People in, predominantly Black areas, I have gone out to Willingboro once or twice already. And the concerns are things like safety. The concerns are things like income inequality, access to economic opportunity, access to good, decent education, the ability to afford a home, the ability to have gainful employment, jobs that last. These are things that matter to people across the board, decent public services. And like I said, what a mother in Willingboro wants for her child is the same thing that a mother in Medford wants for her child as well. So I think that connecting with people is figuring out what the shared sense of human suffering is, the depths of human suffering, and offering decent solutions to directly respond to them. Not going and saying, I think that there are a lot of conservative Republicans who go to these areas and they try and tell them to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. When you have generations of economic, destitution, people have been left behind by the information economy. I think that we need to be a vehicle for real change.
Well, I've always said this, and obviously no group is monolithic, but I really do believe that if your party wanted to get more African American voters, they could do it because I've known many African Americans who are politically conservative in many areas. I would even consider myself politically conservative, even though I'm a Democrat. There are a lot of, I mean, on the issue of school choice, I don't know where you stand on it, but, school choice is one of those things. There's also, I know a lot of African Americans are not happy about this current border crisis because from what I
Yeah.
understand, a lot of times when illegal immigration is rampant, the community that are most affected is the Black community because, I mean, I think I saw a study from 2017, 2016 that said that on average, illegal immigrant men make more money than African American men. From an issue of fairness, I'm not saying that that's because that the people here illegally, that's maybe the main reason, but from an issue of fairness, it just doesn't sit right with me. So I feel like that if Republicans wanted some of these voters, you could be getting more of them.
For sure. And I will say this, I will say, my grandmother was an immigrant. I fully appreciate that we all have an immigrant story in this country and that there's a lot of people who want to come seeking a better life for themselves and their children, but we have to make sure that the law, the immigration law is enforced. That's why if I am elected, I'm going to make sure that we are working with DHS and ICE on the county commissioner board to ensure that the law is enforced and that people who are breaking our laws, because look, immigration law, if we're talking about somebody who wants to become a naturalized citizen, respecting immigration law is almost like the first litmus test of a good
Right.
citizen, what kind of citizen you're going to be. And if you are coming into this country illegally, not going through the proper channels, and look, there does need to be reform, but if you're not going through the proper channels, I think that, you need to go to the back of the line.
Hmm.
I think it's that simple. And, our people across the economic and ethnic and racial spectrums need to be prioritized and put first by our government in every policy that we implement.
I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, I think that there needs to be reform, but we are seeing, I mean, we were sold this BS theory that sanctuary status makes cities safer. If New York and Philadelphia are supposed to be examples of it, I'm just not seeing it. And to be honest, I mean, the argument was that uh, if people here illegally can go to the police to report a crime, then that brings down the crime rate. Two things. First off, if people here illegally are having that big an influence on the crime rate, that's probably a sign that we have way too many people here illegally, and we're not doing
Right.
a job regarding border security. And the second thing is that I think that it hasn't we're not seeing the results of that, honestly. It seems like an excuse to make our immigration system a free-for-all.
Absolutely. And I will say this, I think that there's a lot of jabber about how, oh, well, illegal immigrants commit a lower violent crime rate than American citizens. Look, I think one crime, one violent crime, one life, Lake and Riley in the University of Georgia campus, one American life cut short by somebody who wasn't even in this country legally is one too many.
I agree with you. And technically speaking, coming here illegally or overstaying your visa, regardless of how you're not here legally, is a crime. It may not be a violent crime, but still.
Oh,
And
yes, yes, of course.
yeah, so
Yes.
I do. I mean, I think that yes, they may commit fewer violent crimes, and good for them. I'm happy about that. But I mean, there has to. I mean, our immigration laws are not supposed to be suggestive. I mean, it's so I agree with you. No, no sanctuary county at this time, and
Yeah, which we currently are, I do believe.
not good. And I do think that I understand the argument that like, if someone here illegally was a crime victim or witness to a crime, I would say that if they don't have any criminal record besides their entry or overstaying their visa, and they cooperate with police, they should have a pathway to legal status because they assisted the system with prosecuting a criminal. So I think that it should be taken on a case by case basis rather than a one size fits all approach.
Sure, I think that there needs to be nuance. Certainly, the way that we handle our legal immigration system needs some reform, right? Because the back channels are years in advance. We have cases for asylum backdated like 4 or 5 years. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are going to skirt around that system. So I think we need efficient court cases to process asylum hearings. I think we need an efficient system that processes people legally. Again, this is above my pay grade as a candidate for county commissioner, but this is just my personal belief. But in my capacity as county commissioner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the law is enforced and that American citizens are protected. and
Right.
that their rights are their rights and their interests are put first.
Absolutely. And that's all you can do. And that's why it makes sense that if you don't have a valid asylum claim, you got to go back to the country that you came here from, because, if we allow you to stay here, we're flooding the immigration courts, and people in detention centers who might have valid asylum claims or people who need to be deported, it's going to get kicked down the road. It's just not good for anyone.
I mean, sure. I mean, every asylum seeker deserves a fair hearing.
Right.
That's why, we need efficient courts to process those claims quickly and effectively. But again, insofar as we do have people immigrating to this country illegally, we have to make sure the law is enforced
Right.
and
Exactly.
respected.
What do you think of do the commissioners ever work with the governor's office, or no? Or are in contact with governor's office?
I'm not sure to the degree that they are. I would imagine to some degree at least because there is influence over things like pinelands preservation, farmland preservation, open space trust, different county level government services sort of overlap with state government services. So I would imagine that there's contact between county and state departments. In terms of direct contact, I'm not certain.
Hmm. What do you think of Governor Murphy?
I don't have that much of an opinion in terms of policy.
Uh-huh.
I think that the New Jersey Democrats in general, have gotten, very complacent. I don't think they're looking at things like rising income inequality, rising addiction, rising crime as serious concerns when they are serious concerns. The fact that you're willing to cut millions and millions of dollars from these school districts where, at this point you're hinging on whether someone's going to have an after school club in their school or not, whether someone's going to have after school busing, whether someone's going to even have a school district, or you're going to have to merge them and increase class sizes by 40%. You're not looking out for the people of New Jersey when you're willing to implement policies like that are so lopsided. So I don't have a positive opinion of him, but I don't have much to say.
Okay. And you're from Burlington County, and your congressional district is CD3. Andy Kim is obviously your congressman for now. He's running for Senate. What do you think of Congressman Kim?
I will say there are some things about Andy Kim that I do respect. I respect that he was willing to forward a bill to ban insider trading. I think the transparency and anti-corruption, is very important. That's something that I'm going to be taking a hard look at as county commissioner. Like I said, we have a certain state lawmaker who double dips into state taxpayers' money. That's something that needs to be looked at. But on the federal level, you've got people, benefiting directly from insider trading, and that needs to be dealt with head on. So I really supported that measure. There are other things where I just find him to be a very respectable man on a personal level. I don't agree with him on a lot of his policy, but I bear him no ill will.
Well, it's great to hear that, because I'm a big fan of Andy Kim, and I think he's a very moralistic politician, much like yourself. What and because he is running for the Senate, it is an open an open seat, and I want to know. You had mentioned Herb Conway; he's running for this congressional seat as a Democrat, and Carol Murphy. You can't vote in the Democratic primary, but what do you think of Conway versus Murphy?
I'm not too sure about the specifics of the two candidates. I had the pleasure of meeting them both on Tuesday, actually.
Mhm. Where'd you
They
meet
seem
them?
like fine. We had a Civic League town hall, actually nearby to where I'm based out of, just a town over. So, it was a pleasure to meet both of them. I'm not so certain what their, policy objectives are because they both seemed to be sort of puffy politicians who didn't really have much to say on policy. But on the Senate level, I find Andy Kim to be quite effective. I find him to be respectable. However, I'm proud to say that I support Curtis Bashaw for the Senate race. He seems to be a very, nice guy as well. I think he has the capacity for strong leadership. And I think that a lot of his policy priorities, in terms of combating addiction, combating crime, and restoring the middle class in New Jersey, are things that I also support.
Well, Curtis is lucky to have an advocate such as yourself. And I want to ask, real quickly, what do you think of the 2024 presidential election? Who are you going to vote for?
Okay, this is quite a difficult question. I think that a lot of people in this country are unhappy with the decision that they're being faced with, regardless of the decision that they make, and for good reason. I will say that some of Trump's new policies are things that I very much agree with, like going after predatory for-profit colleges and using the money to create a free public university system. I think that's great. I think that, Biden as well, one thing, and there are very few things, but one thing that I would say I enjoy about Biden's tenure is that he strengthened the labor board. It is the strongest that it's ever been. I'll give him credit for that. However, I think when you have this, the oldest combination of nominees in our country's history, competency is what it comes down to. When the Her report came out, what we found was that Joe Biden could not remember when he was vice president or within several years of when his son passed away. And I think that that's a dangerous level of cognitive decline. I don't bear him any ill will as a person. I pray for him. I pray for his health because he is our president. But I think that's a dangerous level of cognitive decline that we should think very carefully about before empowering with a second term.
So just to be clear, are you voting for Donald Trump?
With that said, if Trump is the Republican nominee, I will likely be voting for Trump. Yes.
Are you concerned about his are you concerned about his criminal charges?
I'm waiting to see what the facts of the cases are before, I finalize a decision. Due process is what it is. I'm sure the system, everything will bear out in the wash, and we will go from there. If it comes out that there are some egregious crimes that took place during his tenure or before his tenure, that's something that we are going to have to take a hard look at for sure.
So if he's convicted, and I don't want to rush to judgment because he is innocent until proven guilty, what would you do?
If he is convicted, that's something that again I would take a hard look at, but I wouldn't take a strong stance on. It would depend on what the facts of the case are, and I'm sure that they will come out.
All right. Well, any closing thoughts because we only have about a minute and 30 seconds left.
Yeah, sure. I think that this is an existential election this year. We are deciding what kind of country we want for our future, for our children. Do we want a country that is run by, this sort of elitist group that is going to deprive our children of a decent future, deprive them of the right to afford a home, deprive them of a right to, decent education? Or are we going to take power back in the hands of the people and use government as a vehicle to fundamentally improve people's lives? I stand in favor of things like early education access, expanding BCIT and trade schools, addressing the root causes of crime. I think that I have a very strong policy agenda that, if I'm elected, I'm really looking forward to serving the people and improving their lives. You can follow me on Twitter at RealJDuff. Yeah, no, but thank you so much for having me.
All right, pleasure. Thank you, Johnathan Duff, Republican candidate for Burlington County Commissioner. All right, take care.
Thank you. Are we